Welcome to Your Wise Self with Sara. I'm so happy you are here. We are going to have a very special episode today. We're pulling back the curtain on something that most people don't hear from their doctor, and that's how medications that are supposed to be helping us can quietly be draining the very nutrients that our bodies need to thrive. My guest today is Aaron McDonough. He's a pharmacist in Iowa City, Iowa, with Towncrest Pharmacy. And he is a part of Your Wise Year, the year-long program that I have dedicated to having a monthly masterclass to help people along their journey this year understand how to embrace their health and thrive. And today we're going to hear from Aaron about the very topic he's going to talk about on his masterclass July 1st at 7 p.m. Central. So let's get into it, and then I'll give you more details at the end on how to access that masterclass. Welcome, Aaron. It's so great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Sarah.
I've had you on the podcast, so you are a regular now here. But for those who haven't listened to those 2 episodes, which of course we want them to go back and listen to, would you just give a little background on who Aaron is and what you do as a pharmacist here in Iowa?
Absolutely. I graduated pharmacy school in 2021 from the University of Iowa College of Pharmacy. And throughout all of my pharmacy school training, was learning about drugs, which that makes sense. That's what a pharmacist does. They talk to you about drugs. But as I graduated and got into the fields, I found out that people weren't necessarily excited about taking drugs. And rightfully so. Sometimes it's not the most fun thing to be on 1, 2, or 10 plus drugs, which we see sometimes. That's when I started understanding a little bit more about how I could create solutions for people to be less maybe dependent on prescription drugs through lifestyle. And that's what came across nutrition. And I found out as I was reading and learning more about nutrition is that a lot of it is biochemistry, which in pharmacy, that is all we talk about is how a medication has a biochemical reaction with the body, and that changes a physiological outcome. And that's why people get started on medications. Well, then I found out that nutrition actually does the same thing. And I feel like now, 5 years later, it's common sense to me that eating healthy and having a healthy lifestyle makes you a healthier person. But unfortunately, as we see, and as I talk to more and more people, it's not as much common sense as we'd like it to be, especially with just all the exposure that we have to unhealthy lifestyles in America, whether it's from convenience foods or stress, working and having long hours in the office, whatever it may be. We have a lot of distractions in our life that really change kind of the outcome of our health. And so that's when I started learning more about nutrition and how we could actually have those conversations with people about nutritional biochemistry in an effort to help them be less dependent on prescription drugs. So I tell people I spend all of my time talking with people about how to get them off of medications. And I think to me, that's not surprising, but to a lot of people, that is surprising that a pharmacist would do that.
Yeah, it's very unusual and unique, but it's so appreciated because I think that there's so many people out there trying to seek exactly what you are offering. And I myself have had times where I'm like, I really don't want to be on this medication, but I needed it at the time. And I always went into any kind of medication thinking, this is going to be temporary. I will find a better way. I'm grateful to say that today, thanks to you, because eventually I was able to work with you on a medication that I wanted to go off of, and it's just completely changed my life. And like you and I've talked about before on the podcast too, people are going to seek ways to either go off of medications or they could be mixing supplements in there with their medications. So now they have somebody that they can talk to about how that works and maybe those interactions and things like that as well.
Yeah, that was another thing that got me really into this is I realized just how many people were taking supplements, how many people were looking into alternative treatments. And so people would come to me, and I think I've said this on previous podcasts, but people would come to me and ask me what I would recommend as a replacement for a medication, or do I recommend XYZ supplements? And I didn't at the time as a pharmacy student because it just wasn't trained. It wasn't in our training, wasn't in the accreditation of the programs. And so we were commonly taught in school to kind of steer people away from that and to talk to them more about what has been approved by the FDA, which is prescription drugs. And that increased time after time again, year after year, where people just kept on asking more and more about it. And it's gotten to present day where people will come in with bagfuls of supplements. And I personally tell people too, it's not like I would just want to replace a prescription drug with a supplement either. I don't think that's the long-term solution. So let's try to consolidate what you're taking. We shouldn't switch 20 drugs for 20 supplements. And so we just see that because there is direct to consumer, because of social media and how easy it is to buy things within one click, a lot of people end up kind of starting on a regimen, whether they started it or someone recommended it, or even another provider maybe mentioned it one time before. Well, they get overwhelmed too, that all of a sudden they once were maybe on 10, 15 meds and they got off of them, but now they're on 10, 15 supplements and they're even more overwhelmed. So
Right.
I think it's really coming full circle now that it's teaching people that one, you don't need to be dependent on prescription drugs, but that doesn't mean that you have to be dependent on a bunch of supplements either.
Sure.
Now, are supplements great? Absolutely, especially if we're using pharmaceutical or professional strength supplements. But does that mean that I just need to switch one for the other? Not always.
I put together a 4-part wellness series this summer for free, and one of them is about Supplements 101 because I have interviewed you and I will definitely reference you and send people your way to further explore, but just to help people demystify a little bit about the basics, looking at your foundational 5, for example, and looking at what is it that we're needing. I know one that's not used as often as it should be is vitamin D, for example. To your point, people are bombarded with messages and types, and we could be spending our days taking supplements if we aren't careful. So let's get into it. Let's talk about your program you're bringing to your Wise Year. What you're bringing to the table for us is that medication is actually depleting nutrients in our body. So if you can just take us back to that point and walk us through what's happening in the body, that would be great.
I always tell people if anybody's ever interested in getting involved in functional medicine or more holistic pharmacy or any type of healthcare, the first thing that they need to know is drug-induced nutrient depletion because drugs are the number one modality of healthcare that people are utilizing on a regular basis. And unfortunately, they're depleting a lot of nutrients. And so some of the most common prescription drugs that people get put on, I know statins is one of the most common drugs that a lot of people are taking for cholesterol lowering. That would be like your atorvastatin or rosuvastatin or simvastatin. We know that its direct mechanism, it blocks coenzyme Q10. And it does this through the same mevalonate pathway that it works on to lower cholesterol. CoQ10 is also a byproduct of that, and it completely depletes it. And coincidentally, the number one side effect of statins is muscle aches, and that's also the number one side effect of CoQ10 deficiency. So that's one that I always tell people. We do a lot of pain consults here, and a lot of times it's not just pain, but it's metabolic health. I can't tell somebody to change their lifestyle and exercise more and become more active and be more motivated to eat healthier when their nutrients are getting depleted by medications and the nutrients that are being depleted are essential for energy production, are essential for pain relief, are essential for motivation. So CoQ10 is a great example because it's involved in so much. I talk all the time about mitochondrial health and the Krebs cycle, and that's where the biochemistry component comes in. Coenzyme Q10 is a nutrient involved in that Krebs cycle, as well as B vitamins, as well as magnesium, that make your body's energy source, which is adenosine triphosphate. When we're depleted of that, we are depleted of energy, and therefore we're not going to feel very motivated to exercise, motivated to make a comprehensive lifestyle change. So, statins and CoQ10 is, in my opinion, one of the most low hanging fruit, easiest low hanging fruit supplement or nutrient depletion to talk to people about.
Can you remind us what a statin does for people?
Yeah, so statins are commonly prescribed when people show elevated cholesterol levels. So that could be your total cholesterol, it could be your LDL, or it could be your HDL being too low. So statins are, well, we call, I guess high cholesterol is what I call a modifiable condition. meaning it's not something that you get diagnosed with and maybe you get diagnosed when you're 40 or even 30s. And you're like, oh, well, I have high cholesterol for the rest of my life. You have high cholesterol right now. It's a modifiable condition. Now, there are situations, post stroke, for example, that it would be probably in that person's best intention to stay on a statin. So there are reasons why somebody might be on a statin long term, but majority of people who go on a statin is for primary hypercholesterolemia or high cholesterol, which is a modifiable condition.
Okay.
And so cholesterol is generated within our liver. And I know a very common hot topic buzzword right now is fatty liver. And
Yes.
everybody seems to be talking about how we can improve our fat in our liver and our visceral fat, which is surrounding all of our organs. And so, how we can improve that obviously is through lifestyle, and we can improve that through replenishing any nutrients that are being depleted.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the whole concept of a lot of these conditions is that they're modifiable. They're not something you're stuck with for life.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. That's why I appreciate having you on here so much because with my lifestyle medicine training as well, I mean, this is one of the things, and it's not easy. We know that lifestyle is an adjustment and it does take a little bit of time, but it is such a long-term benefit when people are able to cue into that change. You spoke to a little bit of symptoms that people could be watching for in terms of nutrient depletion with the statin blocking CoQ10 and then causing muscle aches. Are there any others that are noteworthy?
Yeah, I always about acid reducing medicines because not only are they commonly prescribed, but they're also available over the counter without a prescription. So that would be like your omeprazole or Prilosec, pantoprazole, famotidine, even antacid like Tums. Those aren't to the extent of a proton pump inhibitor like omeprazole, but all of those medications or over the counters reduce your acid in your stomach. And everybody's like, well, yeah, of course, that's what we're taking them for. Well, what I talk to people about is why are you having acid reflux? And most people think it's because I'm producing too much acid. And the answer is incorrect. In fact, if you look into the literature, most of the time it says that it's because they actually have symptoms of hypochlorhydria, which is low stomach acid, low hydrochloric acid in the stomach. So then you're thinking, well, why the heck do I have acid or heartburn symptoms? And it's not because of too much acid production. It's because acid's going to the wrong place. And there's actually a little sphincter, is what we call it. The lower esophageal sphincter, or LES, becomes impaired and it kind of flaps open too much. And the little acid that we do actually have in our stomach goes into our esophagus and creating those heartburn symptoms. And the things that impair that lower esophageal sphincter are lack of activity, being overweight, and poor diet. Oftentimes processed spicy foods, caffeinated beverages, sugars, etc. All of that can impair that sphincter.
Okay.
So that's completely different from what everybody thinks, which is I just have too much acid production. And quite
Sure.
frankly, it's the opposite. You have too little acid production. Well, why is acid important? So everybody's acid sounds kind of scary. Like, why the heck do we want acid? Acid is what digests your macros, so your proteins, your carbohydrates, and your fats. And it also digests your micros, your micronutrients, your vitamins, your minerals, so that your body can then send it into the small intestine where absorption occurs. And if that does not occur and you have low stomach acid and you don't digest macros or micros, well, a couple things happen. One, nutrient deficiency, because you're not absorbing, digesting and absorbing nutrients. But two, if we're not digesting macros, they can also impair our gut lining. We won't dive too much into intestinal permeability, which is
Yeah.
a fancy word for leaky gut, but that is the root cause of several inflammatory conditions, which can even create scenarios or environments where high cholesterol is going to be more common, or high blood pressure is going to be more common, or high blood sugar is going to become more common. So it's all tied together.
Yeah.
So going back to what PPIs or H2RAs, these acid reducing agents are doing, when we take them, they lower your acid in your stomach. They make it so that your nutrients, your food from the nutrients can't get absorbed. And therefore we have nutrient malabsorption and we have potential gut concerns. And what a lot of people uh, don't know is that we are taught in pharmacy school that long-term uses of specifically like omeprazole can lead to osteoporosis.
Mhm.
But nobody ever once said it was due to a calcium malabsorption. Like we just
Wow.
knew that black box warning, long-term risk, PPIs is associated with osteoporosis. Well, I mean, we can very easily understand that if you lower nutrient absorption, calcium is an acid dependent nutrient. Calcium is good for bones. I always think about the Got Milk commercials when we were younger with the milk mustaches that you just don't even see anymore because we don't milk, which is a whole nother category. People have calcium malabsorption because they're taking PPIs, and that can lead to long term risk of bones becoming more frail.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you know the science and you know the depths of the implications of all of this. And as you were talking, just from my education and health coaching and yoga therapy and lifestyle medicine, I'm listening to you say about this leaky gut. And I'm also hearing that with the leaky gut and what's going on in our stomach, we also know is connected to our mental health because of this nerve and the vagus nerve, for example, running from our brain to our stomach, basically into our gut and then touching all the organs as it goes wanders through the vagus nerve, meaning wandering nerve. So that to me is the other impact too, is we're not only talking about you're talking about from muscle aches to metabolic health to osteoporosis implications. And then I'm thinking, and on top of this, we could keep talking about this impacts our mental health even
Mhm.
more, even on top of all of that. So, yeah, it's amazing because we're everything's connected in our body, which again, it seems like not a foreign concept to us, but to some people it was very much like separated before the physical body, and now we understand that to be very different.
Absolutely. It is all tied together, and to take it a step further even after mental health starts declining, certainly if your mental health is not where we need it to be, the rest of your health is not. You're not going to be motivated to do all those things that we
Right.
need to do to have a healthy lifestyle. And
Right.
so I always find it interesting that, well, first, in all chronic disease states, the first line treatment is always listed as exercise, nutrition, healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's very tough to tell somebody to live a healthier lifestyle if they don't feel motivated to do that. And it's
Right.
very tough to do that if we're, like we just said, everything's connected, basically just impairing their overall mental health because of that whole connection with their gut, their brain, and their entire body.
Yeah.
So a vicious cycle. One thing leads to another, which leads to another, which leads to another. And if you don't address everything, but also the root cause,
Right.
it's really not going to get fixed. And then that cycle just keeps getting worse. And to be honest, that's part of the reason why we see people in America becoming so sick is because we go down this cycle. We give them even more medicines that can deplete even more nutrients or have side effects like sedation. And we just don't get outside. We don't get active. We don't eat healthy because we have no motivation to do so.
Yeah. Wow. And such a powerful message. And I hope people are really hearing that because this might be just the motivation that they need to talk to their doctor or maybe call you up and make an appointment to say, hey, what can I do to get off of my statins or reduce the acid reflux medication that I'm taking and start down this path and the first steps? What would be the first step for someone who's wanting to go off of these? Because sometimes we can't just go off of them right away without any warning kind of thing.
Yeah, I always say start with your general practitioner, your GP, and see where their mind's at, aligning up with what your goals are. And I also think there's a generational shift to how healthcare is being consumed and how healthcare is being provided. I think previously it was, hey, my doctor, my pharmacist, whoever, they told me I have to do this to be healthy. And because of that, I'm going to listen to them.
Yeah.
Or now people are like, know why they told me to do that. Why? Tell me
Right.
why you're telling me to do that. And does it align with my goals? So what I tell people is if you bring this concept or these concepts up to your general practitioner and you're super passionate about them, but it does not align with what they want for you, it might be time to search for another practitioner. Goal is not to tell you what to do. It's to help guide you into a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so that's what I always say is start with the general practitioner, see what they have to say about it. And then if not, and they're not interested in moving forward with you, it might be time to find another provider, another practitioner. Sometimes that's where I do come in and people say, talk to you about this. And we do in-person and virtual consults all the time. And sometimes it involves us kind of connecting people with providers in their particular area. And sometimes it has us becoming a little bit more of a focal point in their healthcare journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's so true that we've had this transition from the doctor being the expert to the patient being the expert because we know our own bodies and we're getting more in tune with our health and what it is that we want to feel. And then having that layer of support from someone like yourself who's a functional pharmacist, which means you're going to help them get to root cause. I mean, all of that just, it makes so much sense. Speaking of root cause, how often do you also see patients that are prescribed a second medication for symptoms that are actually nutrient loss from the first one? That prescribing cascade, it sounds like.
Yeah, we see this all the time, unfortunately. I do have the opportunity to speak with some of our College of Pharmacy students at the University of Iowa, and I talk to them about how and why medication was created. In my opinion, medication was created for acute situations that need to be addressed immediately.
Yeah.
But for chronic situations, your medication or your medicine should be healthy lifestyle. And if we do everything in our will to fix our lifestyle and then we can't seem to be getting our biomarkers or our body's health to where it needs to be,
Mm.
that's when maybe medication can come in. But
Yeah.
I think we're very quick to prescribing. And so that happens usually for the first time, and we see somebody get prescribed a drug that causes a side effect. It could be a statin with a muscle ache. Next thing you know, we're taking a muscle relaxer because we have muscle aches, and then we're sedated all the time, and then we're trying to perform activities of daily living, and we're trying to raise a family, we're trying to work and be effective at work. So next thing you know, we need a stimulant because we're
Right.
super tired and we can't focus. And then we take that, and then next thing you know, we get some anxiety symptoms. So then we get put on maybe a benzodiazepine,
Oh
and
my
then we're back
gosh.
to being sedated and tired. And so this cascade happens over and over and over again. And in my opinion, is why we see people on so many different medications. It's not because they woke up one day and they had ADHD, anxiety, muscle aches, high cholesterol just randomly. Is because it started with one thing led to another thing led to another. And throughout that entire process, we just slowly became less active in our life. I mean, we already have challenging lives to begin with. Everybody's on a time crunch, everybody feels a little bit stressful. But then when we add in depletions on top of that, we're adding in medications that are causing side effects on top of that. It just exacerbates the entire situation.
Yeah.
And we just see that time after time again. And it's unfortunate because we'll see that being the cascade of event that, depending on how old somebody is, could wind them into a nursing home or being less independent to do the things that they want to do or live independently. And it's an unfortunate cascade or cycle that we see far too often.
Right. Absolutely. Live in a very fast paced world. Just like you said, it's the compounding of from one thing to the next of, okay, well, I'm not keeping up. So take another medication to help me keep up. And then pretty soon you have multiple depletions of nutrients that are happening and we're not eating well on top of that. So my goodness. I mean, it's very complex, but the answer seems very simple too.
If we get to it at an earlier stage, it is a lot easier for us to understand and a lot less complex of a concept to grasp our mind around.
Yeah.
But I think that when you get to that situation when you're already 5, 10 years down the line and you're on 5 or 10 different meds, now you're, well, I can't just stop all of them. So what do I do? Which one's most important for me to stop? Which one's detrimental for me to stop? Which one's going to cause a side effect? Which one's causing the most side effects right now? And I think that's what just sends people into a tizzy. They get so
Right.
overwhelmed by this. And just, in my opinion, an avoidable situation to begin with.
Yeah. So someone's being told by their doctor right now to go on a statin. The best thing that they can do is just say, hey, hang on a second, I want to do my research. Hopefully, they're listening to this podcast. Hopefully, they're reaching out to you and getting more informed on what it is that they can do as an alternative. So, yeah. Okay. So here we go. We'll just let's touch on supplements just for a minute because this is a critical part of your work in the part that you offer supplements through Towncrest. So when it comes to supplements, can you tell us just a little bit about, obviously sourcing is really important, and we talked about this in the episode when we did supplements 101, but can you tell us how to navigate that world?
Yeah, absolutely. That part of the reason why people get a little frustrated is because maybe they try to navigate it themselves and they hear there's a lot of influential posts, there's a lot of influential people, there's a lot of family members and friends that might be saying things, and they might take matters into their own hands, and then next thing you know, they're, overwhelmed. So when I first started talking to people about supplements, and my whole goal was just to give them the education to make an informed decision on their own health, I found out, and I'm sure a lot of people are aware of this, that just most supplements are just not great. Most supplements that are available are not great. And the reason being is because they're not FDA approved. They don't go through that entire process that prescription drugs do to get approved. Nor do we really want them to go through that process, but it does create a whole nother layer of time, expertise, understanding to make sure that you're on the right things. And so, as it relates to minerals, we talked about calcium and magnesium earlier. If they are not chelated, which means they are protected by an amino acid. So if they're not protected by that amino acid, they are subject to that same malabsorption
Mm,
that our food was if we are taking an acid reducing agent. So hence why long term it's our best interest to try to get off of that medication because it's kind of making us dependent on a supplement to get the nutrient absorbed because we're just not getting it from food because our food's not really chelated.
right.
So what chelated means is it's protecting the mineral so that it can not be acid dependent and it can force itself into the small intestine. And so any mineral that we're taking, which includes calcium, iron, zinc, magnesium, all of these should be chelated. And if not, they're not going to have as much absorption. They're going to have usually more side effects from.
Yeah.
So I would say in my role, I hear people come and talk to me all the time saying, "Oh, I've taken magnesium before. That doesn't work. It's snake oil. It just gave me diarrhea. Like, I'm not going to take magnesium."
Yeah.
And I just ask a couple questions. Well, what magnesium do you take? And they go, well, I don't know. It just said magnesium on the bottle. So I'll usually ask them if they either have the bottle or if we can pull it up online. And once we get the bottle, whether it's an image online or the physical bottle, we'll turn it around and every single time you'll point to that supplement facts. You'll usually see in small print magnesium oxide or magnesium citrate, which are very low absorbable magnesium minerals that are rock salts that just aren't going to get absorbed. And what we tell people is wherever a mineral goes, water follows. So if in the stomach, water is going to force its way into the stomach, and that's going to create a laxative effect. So we don't want laxative effects when we're taking our minerals or our vitamins, and that's commonly what people see when they're taking a low quality mineral or vitamin is diarrhea or GI discomfort, and they're not going to get absorption. So the actual benefit they're trying to achieve from the supplement or vitamin or mineral is not getting achieved. And that's where the chelation process comes in. Let's just bypass all of this and force it into the small intestine for absorption. And then with B vitamins, I think we've touched on this before, but methylation, so important. Methylation is the process that your body does to make sure that we basically don't want elevated homocysteine levels and we want cysteine as opposed to homocysteine. And when we do have homocysteine, we are in a lot more state of inflammation. And we are able to mitigate our homocysteine levels by methylating our B vitamins. And part of the reason why it's important for people to have methylated B vitamins is because there's gene mutations, polymorphisms that people have that make it so that they can't actually absorb non-methylated B vitamins. So what that means is B12, cyanocobalamin is inactive, take it as methylcobalamin, which is the methylated version. Same with folic acid. We want 5-methyl tetrahydrofolic acid, which is the methylated version. So again, oftentimes when I bring up all these crazy long words with people, they're like, okay, this is overwhelming, but it just
Right.
is a testament to how even the nutrients, lifestyle, healthy behavior market or industry isn't as straightforward as we maybe want it to be.
Yeah, exactly. The methylation is that people who have that gene mutation, there's 50% of the population. You've shared that statistic before too. So honestly, everybody should just take the methylated B vitamin because would it be just easier that way? I mean, is that kind of a blanket statement, or do you really prefer people would actually get tested for that?
Yeah, I always tell people it just makes sense to take a more bioavailable form of a nutrient. However, testing is huge. People are very interested in testing. Testing is going to be an industry that continues to grow, and people are going to be more continuously interested in learning more about it. I order testing all the time for people who might want to learn more about it because testing shares with us a lot of information,
Yeah.
and it also can help guide how we might approach it from a nutritional level, not just as it relates to B vitamins. I'll give a quick example of thyroid status. So we commonly see people who, again, go down the cycle because one thing affects another that affects another. Their thyroid status starts becoming not ideal and they have symptoms of it, whether it's their hair thinning, weight gain, sluggish fatigue, common symptoms of low thyroid function. And as we know, with inflammation, that can lead to autoimmunity, and Hashimoto's thyroiditis is a whole autoimmune condition.
Yeah.
When we do testing, one, we might throw in, we'll create a custom panel oftentimes for people, and we might throw in those gene mutations to test for MTHFR gene mutation. But in that process, I might want to see where their thyroid levels are. And this one case that I recently did, I actually did the MTHFR gene mutation, saw that they were positive for that. But what was interesting was when I looked at their thyroid status, they had high normal T4, which is your inactive thyroid. They had an elevated TSH, which is telling us that they're hypothyroid, which is the usual diagnosis that people will get, or the lab test that they'll get to make a diagnosis is TSH. But one lab that's not commonly tested for is reverse T3.
Mm.
So in this particular case, I saw high T4, high TSH, low T3, and high RT3. And the most important lab is making sure your active thyroid, which is T3, is normal.
Mm.
But that wasn't in her, and the inactive T4 was high or normal, and the reverse T3 was high. And what that told us is that because this person has a nutrient depletion, they are actually not converting their inactive thyroid into their active thyroid. And because we were able to look at reverse T3, we saw that all of their inactive thyroid was getting converted into this reverse T3, which is a non-biologically active
Right.
thyroid hormone.
Right.
And when we tie that back to the MTHFR gene mutation, one, we know that methylated B vitamins are important, but we also know that this person was taking a PPI, so they were reducing all of their nutrients needed to convert and produce thyroid. So tying it all together, we always talk about iron and iodine needing to actually help your body produce T4. But in order for you to convert T4 to T3, you need selenium and zinc. Both minerals, both commonly depleted by PPIs, both needing chelated nutrients.
Mhm.
And just talking with this person about how we can, one, replace that methylated B vitamin because they needed a methylated B vitamin, but two, getting that mineral on board, those minerals of iodine, iron, selenium, and zinc for T4 production and T3 conversion might actually be the solution as opposed to saying, let's start you on thyroid medications. And I would say that is what we see very often. And then
Yeah.
when people get started on thyroid medications, that's when that could be that first med that is the start of that polypharmacy cascade of events to starting more and more meds.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for breaking that down. And I know that that is a lot of science, but I was able to follow it. This is why I love having you on the podcast and talking to you because you make it so easy to understand. And I always say I can never repeat what you just said, but easy to understand, and it made sense as you went through each of those levels, and ultimately, at the end of the day, you were able to help this person. Hopefully, well, I assume were they willing or able to go off of the PPI and kinda work with nutrients
Yeah.
in a
Yeah,
different
so we
way?
were able to get them off the PPI, and we were able to start them on those nutrients. Just another plug for a specific amino acid, L-tyrosine.
Mm,
I always show people images of what a molecule looks like. And so some people make that joke that if you pull up the chemical structure of Adderall, it looks similar to methamphetamine.
yep.
Well, if you pull up the chemical structure of thyroid hormones, they have a tyrosine foundation surrounded by iodines, which makes sense. T4 has that tyrosine and four iodines. T3 active has that tyrosine and three iodines.
Wow.
So if we don't have tyrosine as an amino acid backbone, we can't help our body naturally produce the needed T4 and T3.
Yeah.
So I think it makes sense to me and it's straightforward in my brain, but I think showing people those images
Yeah.
of this is a drug, this is a nutrient. They look very similar,
Mm,
and we
mhm.
can actually supplement, whether with food or with actual nutraceutical, this ingredient to help naturally produce that molecule in your body to make you feel maybe similar to and maybe even better than that medication is trying to do. I think people get excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that we're visual as humans, oftentimes, that's the way we like to learn, and so that is great that you can show them that, and it's funny, I have used L-tyrosine in my years of different supplements, and I'm like, maybe I need to go get my L-tyrosine back out
There
and
you
put
go.
that in the mix. One of the things that I've been doing more recently is just doing intuitive supplementing, and it feels good because I'm kind of like, well, what do I feel like I need today? And so sometimes I'm not taking the same supplements every single day. And what is your take on that?
No, I would say for the most part, I always tell people that vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, it's tough for us to do damage with them, meaning we're not concerned too much with interactions. We're not too concerned with contraindications. Whenever we start talking about herbs, then it gets a little bit more complicated, especially if we're taking a comprehensive medication regimen.
Yeah.
I pick on St. John's wort all the time. I'm not sure if many people even take that anymore, but that is just a herb that has a ton of interactions.
Right.
CBD is also just derived from the hemp extract plant, has a lot of interactions with drugs. And
Mhm.
so am I against St. John worts or herbs or CBD? Absolutely not. But we do just need to be a little bit more calculated with
Sure.
those starting of those types of supplements. But as it relates to vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, amino acids, it's pretty safe to kind of play around with them to see how our body responds and what the needs are on a regular basis.
Yeah. Well, and 90% of what I take is from you. So healthy mix. But it's funny you say St. John's wort. If I remember correctly, that was supposed to be helpful for PMS, but it interacts with birth control, I think, was the one
Yeah.
of the key interactions. Is that
Mhm.
right?
It interacts with a lot of different meds.
Okay.
So to be frank, I don't really recommend it at all just because
Yeah.
it has so many interactions. And sometimes people start medications without informing me. And I don't
Sure.
want to be the person who's like, yeah, take St. John's wort. And the next thing you know, they have an interaction because of that. So yeah, I would say for the most part, if you're not dealing with herbs, again, herbs are okay. Just be a little bit more calculated as you go
Yeah.
about that. It's pretty safe to to be trialing and erring with antioxidants, amino acids, vitamins, minerals.
Very good. Very good. Well, wonderful. Well, as we start to wrap up here, Aaron, I invited you into your wise year, just kind of circling back to that. This program, this master class is what you're going to do a deeper dive on and give people real specific information. Is there anything that you can add to it that why people would maybe want to come to the master class after hearing a little bit more about this and how people might be able to start making changes?
Yeah, I always find it unique that anytime a healthcare provider, specifically, in my opinion, a pharmacist, is helping you create strategies to not be dependent on maybe what you thought was the way that they make a living.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, That's one thing that I think will be a value add that you will get from this masterclass is strategies to becoming less dependent on prescription drugs
Yeah.
written by a pharmacist who knows prescription drugs.
Right.
So that's one thing. But another thing too, I think drawings and images are so important to general layperson because
Yeah.
for me to start spewing out biomarkers and talking all this biochemistry, Krebs cycle stuff, it might resonate with some people, but I really want people to relate it to themselves, everyday life, and their health.
Yeah.
And the whole goal of that is to make them have more autonomy in their healthcare.
Yeah.
So if you want to become an informed consumer of your health, as opposed to perhaps somebody who's just being told what to do,
Yeah.
that's a value that you'd be obtaining from coming to the master class. Is hopefully we can leave you with a couple tidbits of expertise where you feel like you have more of an opportunity to be involved in your healthcare.
Yeah. Yep. I love it. Strategies and having that visual of having, a PowerPoint or something that you're going to be showing people where you were able to describe it really well today, but also adding visuals behind it. I'm looking really forward to it. I always enjoy listening to you speak, and I really appreciate you coming back out on the podcast again to share with us more about this. So, have a little lightning round today for something a little fun and different to wrap up our time together. So, what is one supplement that you personally would take or you do take every single day?
Yeah. I'd say without knowing other specifics about what somebody might be dealing with, magnesium's gonna be the go-to. It's involved in 300 biochemical reactions in your body. It benefits so many different aspects of your health, and you're commonly depleted in it.
Okay.
It's found in green leafy vegetables and pumpkin seeds, and we don't eat a lot of those, unfortunately, in America.
Sure. Sure. Well, I was just at Costco and I get their big bag of pumpkin seeds at Costco. So if anybody's looking for it, and I think I was just putting some on my salad today.
There you
So
go.
I love it. So, what type of magnesium specifically? Because I know there's a bunch.
Yeah. I always start with just chelated magnesium bisglycinate or magnesium glycinate. I would say that's going to be your foundational, highly absorbable magnesium. And then if you need more of a cognitive supporting magnesium, that's where magnesium L3 and 8 comes in.
Okay. So, glycinate, is that better taken at night or in the
It
morning?
can be taken in the day and at night. It doesn't really matter. I always tell people if you feel like you're not sleeping well, just take it at night because it might have a little placebo effect to make you think that you are sleeping better. But taking it in the morning's fine. It's not going to sedate you. Taking it at night's fine. It's really not going to sedate you or make you sleepy per se. It does optimize your REM cycle, but it can do that by taking it in the morning as well.
Okay, very good. All right. So, what is a book that you would recommend, Aaron?
Yeah, I would say, and this is just so on point for me, the Walls Protocol. I don't know if we've ever talked about this before.
I don't think we have, but I do know. Is it
Terry
Terry?
Walls,
Yeah.
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 Terry Walls was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis,
Yeah.
and she went on a lifelong journey as to how multiple sclerosis be a modifiable condition.
Yeah.
And she was able to modify multiple sclerosis into remission through nutrition and exercise and not being dependent on prescription drugs. And so, such a great read. I had a patient come to me who had multiple sclerosis, and we were able to get him started reading the book, completely change his eating habits. And we also do body composition scans with him on a weekly basis to actually see how his body is changing. And so
Wow.
that is a great resource, a great book for people to read.
Awesome. What was the name of the book?
Yeah, so it's called The Walls Protocol is
The
the book
Walls
title.
Protocol. Okay.
WAHLS.
Okay. Perfect. I will make sure to link that in the notes as well. And then for you, what's been one daily habit that's been a game changer?
Yeah, sleep. Sleep is important. I remember thinking that if I sleep, that meant I was lazy.
Yeah.
It's the furthest thing from the truth. I think it's so important to get 8 hours of sleep, cyclic with it, being very habitual, meaning you should know that your time to go to bed is 10. If that's your time, make it your time every day. And if your time to wake up is 5 a.m., make it your time every day. When you create habits surrounding by sleep, it's easier for you to create habits outside of sleep when you're awake. And that means the exercise that you're doing and the eating habits that you're doing and just overall mood too. I think a lot of it just stems with starting with good cyclical habitual sleep.
Yeah. Yes. And feeding that circadian rhythm. I mean, we know how important that is. Well, thank you so much, Aaron. That was super helpful and super informative. And I know that the audience is absolutely going to love this. I will make sure that I get everything in the notes as far as how people can find you. But would you mind just stating out loud so if people can want to take a quick note of how to reach you?
Yeah. So first on our website, towncrest.com, if you ever hit one of the contact us buttons, you can fill out just a 4 or 5 questionnaire that will put your name, phone number, email address, and what your chief concern is. And we'll reach out to you and we can schedule a session to talk more about whatever your health needs are. So I'd say that's probably the most ideal way to go about it is filling out one of the contact us forms on our website.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much, Aaron. I really appreciate your time and energy here today and look forward to seeing you in your wise year on July 1st.
Always enjoy coming on the podcast and looking forward to July 1st as well.
Great. Wonderful. Thanks so much. See you soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Aaron, for that incredibly informative message today. I hope that you were able to take away something from this conversation that will help you feel more guided, feel more empowered to talk to your healthcare provider about the medications that you're taking. And of course, reach out to Aaron for more of his expertise as needed. What I love about his work is that it really meets people where they are. So, whether you're managing a chronic condition or you're just feeling off and not sure why, this is the exact kind of root cause thinking that Aaron provides feedback on and can help you understand what is most needed in those cases. Your Wise Year is a year-long program, and Aaron is one part of the 11 amazing speakers that we have all year long. And while this is halfway through the year, you are not too late. You can still jump into Your Wise Year, receive all the master classes that have been recorded up to this point, and then also all the master classes going forward for the rest of the year. So all of that will be linked in the show notes below. Please make sure that you send this episode to somebody that you feel will find it to be helpful. Look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, stay wise.